Hi everybody, welcome back to our 2017 ProLab Technical Workshop. I'm Ed Monahan, the Director of Market Intelligence and the one who spends a lot of time studying consumers. I want to thank Levi. I think he did a tremendous job of really characterizing the challenges that photographers face, and to a large extent he's helped us understand that he's chasing a consumer who has changed and changed dramatically. The norms, the attitudes, the lifestyles are completely different today than they were, say, 10 or 15 years ago. Led by iPhoneography. The role of the consumer and the camera in their pocket or the camera in their purse with the iPhone has changed the world dramatically. There's a tremendous emphasis on clutter and abundance, capturing everything and anything that they can capture. And what it's really done, and Levi touched on this a little bit, is it's demystified photography and it's made every image equally unimportant. There are new norms around digital lifestyles, Netflix, Roku, streaming digital media, buying and selling whatever they can online. And we live in a world that's today now socially connected all the time. We know of FOMO, fear of missing out, a consumer behavior that says I've got to be on the world's network at all times or I'm going to miss something important. And again, as we've said before, it's a network of buyers that are ruled by Amazon and Facebook. And so cumulatively, these changes are beginning to shape themselves not only in how consumers behave outside the photography industry, but they're carrying themselves into the photography industry as well and setting expectations and almost norms that a photographer and a lab have to follow. What does it all mean? Well, for one, we've redefined the shopper journey, and we'll talk about that today. How people discover photography, how they discover products, how they consider and how they purchase is moving more and more online and is moving more and more through mobile devices. We've seen an evolution of what we call transient moments. People are capturing everything, not just what's important and not what's just distinguishable, but anything that moves, talks, walks, or eats. How many selfies have you gotten in the last year? How many pictures of someone's meal have you gotten? And again, as Levi discusses, this changes the dynamic of how we value the importance of professional photography. What we also see with this clutter and abundance is the print is forgotten. They take, they share, they file, and they forget they even have it. So we've got a whole new set of norms. I want to summarize in one slide, if I can, a typical 20-minute talk, and that's really that today's consumer audience, their psyche, is really experiencing and living life online, largely through their mobile devices. Someone said at a trade show recently that if it wasn't for mobile, there'd be no Uber. There's increasingly an engagement of our brands and our photographers through social media. There's a new visual literacy called screens, and now more and more emojis where people are expressing a sentence not with a set of syntax words, but with an emoji or an emoticon. And the web plays are more and more being used by our brands and our networks to drive reach, to drive acquisition, to drive conversion, sort of a digital storefront, if you will. The capacity to purchase is high. I don't have enough time to go into today, but the demand for portraiture remains very, very solid. What's changing is how that portraiture is expected to be served, the places and spaces people want content. And although the capacity to purchase is high, the willingness to work for it is low. People don't want to experience the chain of pain, the friction that's involved in, as Levi said, assembling the car, all of the different parts. We also have realized through our consumer surveys that the output, form factor, and use case need to be innovated. The 4x, the 8x, the static or material products that we've sold for 20 to 30 years have reached the heyday of their excitement and their need, and they need to change as well. And then the very sensitive subject of price value. We know that with Shutterfly and many of the retail sites that Levi referred to, there is a price discounting, a free shipping, a free prints, if you will, as we go forward. And so what we would conclude is this. You're going to be, as a lab, asked to help photographers build solutions and build platforms that meet an ever-evolving consumer set of expectations and demands. Anywhere, anytime connectivity, real-time, all-the-time access, infinite and immediate reach, instant gratification, they want it now. And we've seen with Amazon, 1-hour delivery, Amazon Prime benefits, 2-hour deliveries. These are the norms that are shaping consumer behavior, consumer expectations, and the demands that they're going to place on photographers, who in turn will place those demands on our labs. Now, we hear a lot about the consumer social media. We hear a lot about Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. We would almost begin to draw a conclusion: physical output is dead. We've completed multiple studies in the last 18 months that convince us the print is anything but dead. The print and the physical output are very much alive. There is a need for hard copy across all ages, including the millennial generation, who many people think will not print at all. However, there's also a demand for digital utility, a demand for the digital content that fits that digital lifestyle that we described. What we would say is it's an and world, not an or world. It's physical output, physical products, prints, photo merch, books, cards, calendars, canvas, and digital content and digital files, access to the digital things that the consumer can use in Facebook, and meet that top list of bullets, that anytime, anywhere connectivity. And so what we're saying is, as you sell into this future world, it's a requirement you sell the physical products that have made this industry great, that have differentiated it from the iPhone, but also serve the consumer demand for the digital products as well. The sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and frankly, the individual parts don't work as well. I want to share some statistics. We've just completed another round of professional research. Very busy diagram, but what this basically tells us is that in the independent photograph world, or the independent portrait world, weddings, high school, seniors, families, there's an ever-increasing demand for digital content. Not only for digital content in addition to physical products, but as this graph shows, there's more and more a demand for just digital content. And we're doing the consumer a disservice when we don't provide access to the physical products and the output that they want as well. You can see from this graph in the blue lines, that's the percent of respondents who indicated they bought digital products. And in the bubbles, what you see is those percent of digital products that were sold were digital files only. The good news, if you're in the volume game, sports and school, the output remains largely physical. The demand for content and the demand for products are largely served through the 8x10, the sports package, the school package, though we do see an ever-increasing demand for digital products. And so what we would conclude is, again, it's an and world. The consumer of today is looking for that physical product, the stuff to hang on the walls, the wall art, the content that goes into albums, the things that will stand the test of time and that will be gifting and used in ways that a digital file doesn't serve. Having said that, though, there still is the demand for the digital file. The posting in Facebook, the posting in Instagram, the ability to connect immediately with the friends and family network. And so what we see today is, again, this and sort of world. Your challenge is to serve the consumer with high-quality professional content that's captured by a professional photographer, worked backwards through a lab to create physical products that are, wonderful representations of the physical capabilities of a lab, and at the same time provide digital file structure to serve the Facebook and the digital postings. Part of our survey asked this question: would you prefer to do face-to-face with a photographer, or as you've been doing, would you prefer to purchase on a website? The statistic is not a surprise to those of us that have been following the evolution of Amazon and the retailer.com on the consumer side of the house, but the reality is 60% of our respondents indicated they would prefer to purchase online. They want to work interactively with the photographer in a face-to-face environment, but at the same time be able to come back through the system and later in time go through a web environment and look at the images. I want to stress something that's very important. Posting and hosting images on a website, simply showcasing the quality of the work, is not selling. It's not a commercing tool. It's not engaging the consumer in a call to action. It's not creating for the consumer a demand curve or an understanding and appreciation. And I'll talk a little bit in a second about that. Levi said that one of the biggest challenges photographers face is helping the consumer appreciate and understand the value of portraiture, the real differential between a shutterfly print and a professional lab print, the Endura media, the silk media, the canvas media. And so what we would say again is you have to build a service that considers face-to-face selling as the primary mechanism to reach your audience, to showcase your wares, and then allow through a web environment a post-selling process where the consumer can engage and interact electronically. It's very simple. We know what the answer needs to be. Our challenge as an industry, from a vendor standpoint, from a lab standpoint, from a photographer standpoint, is how do we drive customer acquisition and conversion in today's value chain? How do we leverage face-to-face selling and the statistical models that have been built around it and the success we have when we sit one-on-one with a client and showcase the wares and offer the pricing and explain the value, when they can pick up canvas or they can pick up a photo album and they can see physically the difference from what they're used to getting in a consumer world? How do we allow that face-to-face selling at the same time we provide the service of online selling? We talked a lot about the new lifestyle. One of the things we didn't talk about is there used to be an issue of discretionary income as the sole motivator or the sole barrier to further purchasing. Now it's discretionary time. Parents today, who are the primary target of our audience, or primary target that we are trying to sell to, are time-starved and they're patient-starved. Life is stressful. Life is without a lot of free time. And so how do we reach into their world? How do we give them the opportunity to see the value of professional portraiture, to appreciate and understand the quality of the work the lab can provide in a world that's time-starved and income-starved? How do we ensure that the offer is broad enough to meet the ever-increasing consumer demand? Physical, digital products, physical products that transcend prints and portraits and packages and books and albums and canvas and calendars and everything else. Fundamentally the question remains, what is a lab to do? So let me conclude, before we move into some of the different solution space, let me conclude the problem statement in this way. Control has shifted, and this is almost heresy to this industry where the photographer has been the control point. The consumer today is empowered like never before. We don't have time to talk about this concept, but there is a phenomena in the app world, in the mobile space, in the internet world called hyper-adoption, and it's quickly followed by hyper-abandonment. Consumers can test, try, and experiment with anything at no risk of losing anything when they switch. And so the consumer is empowered like never before. Their demands and expectations are following from Amazon and the experiences they have when they shop online, from Netflix, from Facebook, from Instagram. And although those are products and services that are consumer-based and oriented towards a consumer quality level, they are setting an expectation of behavior, an expectation of empowerment. And our challenge as a photography industry is to play into the strength of the consumer's desire to be empowered. Now, having said they're empowered and having said that choices abound, we do face some challenges. You know, the desire of the consumer to buy digital files exclusively, thinking, as Levi said, oh, one day I'll go to Shutterfly, one day I'll go to Walgreens.com, I'll make photo books, I'll make prints, I'll use that content in an ever increasing way to fill my home with display. We know it never happens. We call it the digital dungeon. The content is purchased, it's stored, and it's locked away, never to be seen again. And so again, it's a dangerous balancing act. The consumer's desiring empowerment, desiring control, desiring this ability to have their content and use that content in ways that they think they'll one day do, but we know they don't. And as Levi said so well, one of the greatest services the photographer has and gives to the consumer is the knowledge of what choices make the most sense, what physical products make the most sense, what digital files used in what capacities will give the best experience. And so we're again today facing a heavily empowered consumer, a consumer who wants to take control, but given the control, doesn't use it to the fullest advantage, doesn't service themselves as well as a professional photographer could be. And so we've got a conclusion. You know, Levi said very well, what are the needs of photographers today? Well, number one, how do we get mom and her children? How do we get families? How do we get pets in front of the camera? What are the tricks of the trade? What are the ways in which we can drive a higher level of awareness, a call to action? Book a sitting. You know, weddings are pretty self-contained, schools, habitual conditioned behavior, but we have seen over the last 10 years an attrition out of the portrait sitting world and fewer sittings each year. The next stage of need for a photographer is not only how do I get consumers in front of the camera, how do I get them to review the offers? And as Levi said, and I really was encouraged by this, how do we help photographers through the labs and through Kodak Alaris, how do we help them give the consumer a full and better appreciation and understanding of the value of professional photography? Literally, how do we get consumers to buy today? How do we get share of wallet? And again, what we're looking to therefore do are come up with tools, come up with platforms, come up with solutions that help photographers and labs drive reach and conversion, that help give tools that help to engage customers, face-to-face selling as well as online. And fundamentally, how do we create a tool set that makes it easier to do business? I could talk about DP2, but I'd be talking to the experts. I'd be saying lesser than you already know. The first 5 bullets are sort of characteristics, benefits, advantages of DP2. I say it the way that's written at the bottom of the slide in the last 3 ways. DP2's power is in higher throughput. It allows labs to render and produce more jobs, and it does more and more through an automated scheme. It's allowed the labs to produce more jobs with less labor, less total cost. And at the end of the day, it's a workflow solution that allows flexible and customizable scripts to give you the power that you need to do more. So we've got needs of photographer, we've got the strengths of DP2. And what does this all mean? Well, we've listened to the voice of the customer for the last 3 to 5 years, thousands and thousands of pages of research, thousands and thousands of graphs and charts and statistics, more than you ever want to know. We've listened very carefully, not only to the needs of the industry as explained by photographers and labs, but we've listened to the critical insights that we've gleaned from the consumer, the things that we know to be true. One of the basic fundamentals is that the purpose of photography has not changed in 20 to 50 years, in the same way the purpose of music or the purpose of entertainment has not changed. What's changed are the mechanisms or the mediums that carry that value to the consumer. No longer do we listen to music on 8-track tapes or cassettes or LP records, although vinyl is making a comeback. No longer do we watch television strictly through cable networks or, with the channels being dialed with our fingers. We today are absorbing content in new and better ways, but we know something to be basically true. There is an inherent value and purpose to portraiture. It commemorates physical change. It memorializes the evolution of life. It actually captures the persona of life. There is a tremendous need to service consumers with every year an annual portrait, whether it's through school, through sports, through the independents and families. What we have come to know and what we know to be true is this. The consumers that we desire to sell to, whether it's parents or brides or grooms or seniors, they want professional content. Our challenge is that 20 years ago, the physics of film required the film be converted to a print. The print was displayed prominently in the home. It was gifted to parents and grandparents, and the ecosystem worked flawlessly. Today, with digital utility and digital content, it's possible that the professional products do not have to necessarily hang only on walls. They are available through Facebook. They are available into the various social networks and social stratas. And it's not one or the other, but it's the condition of what we call a necessity and sufficiency. Each one is necessary. Physical is necessary, digital is necessary. But the sufficiency comes when they're both placed together. The other part that we've learned in the last 5 years of studying the consumer-based market is whatever we offer for solutions, especially those that touch the consumer and engage them directly, have to be uber simple. And I say that with a pun intended. Uber simple. For those that have ever used the Uber app, it doesn't get any better. You summon and call the driver, you have the information you want, you have the understanding of when they'll be there, your destination is locked in, there's no cash that exchanges hands, and we have got to build systems that are as simple as an Uber app. Or we used to say the benchmark of simplicity is the Apple solution, the Apple ecosystem. What we've learned is consumers are desiring and demanding your stuff. They're searching for the extraordinary. They're searching for quality design, authenticity, and experience. They don't want to be locked into 10,000 images on a camera roll, all of which are equally unimportant, all of which have demystified photography, all of which sort of render, as Levi said, commodity status to the photography. My personal opinion is that as we see more and more images in the photo cameras and in the mobile devices, we're going to see an evolution or an elevation of the professional content. Professional content will stand supreme. It'll reign supreme. It'll be obviously better and differentiated. The other thing we've learned, and this is an axiom that we've begun to discuss in our talks, is that consumers today desire, and I'll go further than say they desire, I'll say they demand, choice, convenience, and control. And the extent to which you provide a network of solutions or a platform of services that cater to this demand, that it be choiceful, it allow them a broad range of choices, it be convenient, let them do it when it's time and energy that they have to give versus obligatory that they are forced to give, and again, give them control. So the solution space that we see going forward is really along three lines. Digital content that can be shared, the infinite and immediate reach, blended media, digital content that goes into Facebook, that goes into Instagram, that sits on a mobile device. What mother, again, if she's going to share with you the pictures of food she's eating or the selfies of where she's been, she's going to share with you the precious pictures of her children. And so again, this idea of sharing, this idea of having digital file structure, digital content, to be able to build the network of friends and family, to brag on ourselves and brag on our lives and brag on our children, that digital content is absolutely critical and mission critical for sharing. There's also, on the furthest extreme, prints, the preserve concept, the idea that there is nothing more beautiful than when you walk into a home than portraiture that's prominently displayed, portraiture that has an air of permanence, portraiture that has a quality advantage. It's distinguishable. It is better than they can get for themselves through the consumer channels. And then there's this sort of intersection of digital and physical in what we call photo merch or premium-based products. A deeper content, a fuller context, and a richer experience. Photo albums are the best example. You know, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, what's a 20 to 30-page album worth? And the ability to relive life, to retell the stories that we lived. So as we go forward, my concluding slide is this. Portrait market through KC2 will experience a winning play. There is a framework to win, and Levi said it. Never has there been a better time to be a professional photographer. I'll go a step further, go out on a limb and say never has there been a better time to be a professional lab, provided you're able to reach the needs of consumers through your photographer, clients, and customers through a series of solutions that really basically give two dimensions, collections and connections. In the end, our recommendation is the following. Help your photographer customers offer and sell the full ensemble. The physical components that you've done for 30 to 50 years and the digital products that are growing in stature and growing in demand. Simplify the experience. Make it uber simple. Make it as simple as an Apple experience. Reduce the friction and eliminate the chain of pain that consumers have to go to. We're saying again, they're not only discretionary income starved, they're time starved. Provide an online shopping experience. We're not advocating that we abandon or get away from face-to-face selling. What we're suggesting is, in addition to face-to-face selling, provide an online experience that, again, caters to the choice, convenience, and control. And above all, accessorize. Do what you do best. Consult and navigate choice. give the consumer, give the photographer a broad array of products, a broad array of SKUs and catalog items, and then help them navigate through those choices. They want the control, but they want the help. With that, we welcome you to the conference for the rest of the day. Hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you very much.